feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the More NBA podcast. We are brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you Thursday evening. It's May 22nd. I'm here at Paycom Center in Oklahoma City with Britt, Robson again, and we're going to give our immediate reactions to the Wolves. What was it, a 15-point loss in Game 2 that put them down 2-0 in the series. Britt, the Wolves again lose the turnover battle. The Wolves' defense was less effective in this game than they were in Game 1, or the Thunder offense was more productive and efficient in this game. And the Wolves' offense also was sort of stifled again in a similar way. They didn't find a real extra gear in this game. There's a lot of specific things to get into with this, but I was just kind of sitting there in maybe it was the fourth quarter, and it was maybe one of the end of the Thunder sort of barrages. And it just, I think the simplest way that my brain could put it was there's just a gap, or there has been in these first two games between the execution and the sharpness specifically. I don't know if you thought I was going to say talent there, because I'm not sure I don't think that's what it is. There is a gap between, how that Thunder team decides they're going to attack you. They're going to read the way that you're guarding them, and they're going to hit it over and over again. The Wolves tonight in these two games have kind of wandered. What is the direction you're going in offensively? What is it that you're trying to find? And I just think that is a super reductive way to put it, but there's some sort of just execution gap, at least in these first two home games for the Thunder. How have you seen that play out?
Well, I could be even more reductive. I mean, I can say that they've been a better team. I mean, it just is so obvious. And it comes down to teamwork. I mean, they are the epitome of a synergistic team, a team that is greater than the sum of its parts, a team that has been built on discipline and togetherness. They're incredibly connected in terms of what they know. They're anticipatory. They scout well. They prepare well on that scout. They execute well off that preparation. You can see that they are very well grounded, and they're also at this point in time extremely confident. They won 68 games during the regular season and got a scare against Denver, down 2-1 in the series against Denver, and I think it was and had to play a Game 7, an elimination game, after not losing 3 games in a 10-game period for most of that time and sweeping the Grizzlies. And I think that reprieve, I had my doubts. It sounded like playoff talk when Dagnall basically said we're a better team for having played them. Well, at the very least, they are playing now as a team that's been given a new chance to reassert their dominance with some lessons learned. And I just think they're playing extremely well. We saw it in Game 7 against Denver. We've seen the first 2 here. The last 3 games have been pretty phenomenal in terms of, at the end of 3 quarters, I don't know what it wound up being in the fourth quarter, but the points off turnover edge was 50-14, and it was 39-7 against Denver. So that's 89-21 in points off turnovers in 2 and 3 quarters games. I mean, that's elite stuff.
So is it to you more that they're executing at a higher level and the Wolves are executing at a lower level than they normally have, or is it how are you assessing where the Wolves approach and application and effectiveness is at? Is it that they are below the line and the Thunder are just operating above it? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, how much is one or the other?
I think that, well, put it this way. I love the Thunder, and I've watched the Thunder all year, and they're one of my favorite teams. I think they're playing better than I expected them to play. And I think the Timberwolves have a habit of thinking they're as good or as better than other teams. And they just got through with 2 5-game series victories, and I think they came in here relatively confident, if not overconfident. And I don't think they expected the Thunder to be this dominant, obviously. And I think when that happens, it throws you for a loop. And I think that they are scrambling to figure things out and at the same time retain what's good about what they do. But both of those things trying to be happening at the same time get you confused in terms of purpose. I think one of the reasons the Thunder seem so much quicker is their sense of purpose is so much clearer to me.
Yeah.
And I think
that's the way to, that's the word I think I've been looking for, because the Wolves offense at the beginning of the game, I was like, okay, clearly you're trying to approach your offense differently in this game. It was too many, 60% of your shots were threes in game one. You're going to try to, there's different patterns. And like sometimes you're like, okay, I think that's what they're trying to do, but it was like whimsical, the Wolves offense for where it was going. Whereas the Thunder, I think that's what I'm getting at with the sharpness to it. You could see what their plan was.
And that has been characteristic of them the entire season. It's just that the stakes are higher now, and they did get a bump from beating Denver, I think, because the Wolves did play differently, and it didn't matter again in the third quarter after they'd had a halftime to absorb what had, what needed to be tweaked from their stuff from the first half was tweaked. And the Wolves, we talked to a lot of the players after the game, and they're naturally either unwilling or unable or just leave me alone kind of mindset. Totally obvious. Nickeil Alexander-Walker being a glorious outlier on that. I mean, just a kind of guy who literally tries to be honest with you and give you the benefit of his thinking. And he was saying, we just need to kick up the pace a little bit more. And I agree. I mean, when they did ratchet up the pace in the second quarter and the fourth quarter, it worked. The fourth quarter was on the verge of garbage time. It's kind of hard to figure that out. After the Pacers next game, it's really hard to say there is such a thing as garbage time anymore. But that was, a comfortable double-digit lead with less than 6 minutes to play when they really kicked in. The second quarter I thought was interesting, especially, different points of it that they did a good job. But it is still, they looked like they were experimenting most of the game. And that's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Whereas the Thunder is saying, what are they doing?
Let's
that
stop
we
them.
need. Exactly. I mean, it's like, it was just one team is ahead of the curve and the other team is not. And it doesn't look quickly fixable to me. That's the part that, I called the Wolves in 6 if they won one of the first two games here, because I knew winning one of these first two would be important because of the rest advantage and the experience advantage, and the fact that, as anybody who's watched these two games can see, when the Thunder, they are front runners, and that's usually a bad term. It means that you play better or you are better when you're already winning. The problem is that they're self-made front runners. They play better after they have established their lead. All of a sudden, it's like they grind out a 10-point lead and they don't shoot very well, but their defense is carrying them. And all of a sudden, they got a 10-point lead and those shots start to go in because they're comfortable. And we've seen that in the second half, I think, both games.
So what those are the blitzes from them, or where they just kind of come at you like a waterfall, right?
Yep.
And one thing is, we were talking about this, I asked a couple of players about it after the game. One stat that looks good in the Wolves' favor is that in the 51 minutes that Mike Conley has been on the floor in this series, the Wolves have won those minutes by 19 points. And in the 45 minutes that he sat, the Wolves have lost those minutes by 60 points in this series. And I wouldn't say that, I don't think that meets the eye test, and I don't think Mike's shooting or any other real number, if you look at the stat sheet,
simply
sticks
too
up.
large to ignore, though.
It is, and so you go, okay, what are the underlying? What is the common denominator here? And it is the calming presence, and is particularly the calming presence against the ball pressure and against. This isn't his first rodeo against a team that comes at you.
Right.
He's
right.
played for one of those teams before in Memphis.
Right.
And there is, I don't know, just like a detoxifying part of his presence on the team here. And he's 37 years old, so you're not going to be like, okay, the answer here is
Give him 40
15
minutes.
more minutes
right.
a night. It's not that, but it's emblematic, I think, of what the Wolves were missing in the first two games here at Oklahoma City. Nobody else has a positive plus minus through the first two games. Nobody had a positive plus minus in game one other than Mike Conley, and nobody had a positive plus minus in game two, unless something happened at the end there other than Mike Conley. Nope. Yep. He was plus 14. Next best was Jaden McDaniels minus 4.
Mm-hmm.
Other way to put that is Dante is really struggling. But to focus on the Mike part of it, because I think that is emblematic of what this team is missing. They don't have enough of that sort of ethos.
Well, what are the two things he does really, really well? He organizes the game. He is a playmaker, a floor general, whatever you want to call it. And he does not make big mistakes, obvious mistakes. His shot isn't going. He was 1 for 6 tonight. Imagine if he was 4 for 6. It would have been, what's that, another 12 points. He would have been, plus 26 or something maybe.
Let me check your math there. Yeah.
But it is the situation where, and this is comparing anybody to Mike Conley is probably not fair in some respects, but Dante DiVincenzo has many strengths, and they're catalytic strengths. They are the strengths of, like, you want him for the spark he creates. And when he creates that spark,
chaos,
there's risk involved.
Mm-hmm.
He gambles on defense a lot and is strong when he gambles.
It's like Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, in many respects like that way. Right.
But he can shoot.
My stat sheet. So anyway, but it was, I think, to gamble against the Oklahoma City Thunder is either going to be very good or very bad. Mm-hmm. And right now it's been very bad for him.
Right.
And I also don't disagree with the impulse. I thought this team was tentative in the first game, and I did like his aggressiveness. And he got 5 quick points and was starting to roll, but yeah,
DiVincenzo, he started well.
And the Thunder recalibrated. And that's the thing. I mean, Mike, they may know exactly what he's going to do, but he's going to continue to do it well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just think that they need to have more of that, because there is, and it's what makes the best Dante DiVincenzo minutes is when it is chaotic and it's an explosion. It is the Nasri. Right. That's actually how the Wolves go on their runs.
Exactly.
That the Thunder go on is through that. But those guys, their chaos is now meeting a chaotic defense that is a better defense than they are in offense.
And also lives in chaos.
Yes.
I mean, if they're not having chaos, they're going to have a tougher time winning. Mm-hmm. And not only that, but creating chaos is their game plan. Right. It isn't something that happens. Mm-hmm. It's something they create. And
you need to not play that game with them. That's like you need to remove yourself from that. But the Wolves, and this is all postseason, it's all regular season too, they are not a sharp team. They are a team that turns the ball over. They are a team that, they're not precise passers. And there's, again, when that's working and it's fun, and like Nas does the hit ahead pass up the court underhanded, and now swing, and now Dante's got it, and it's boom. But they never do that the Wolves never do that without turning it over.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't need to be the Thunder that they do that against.
Right.
And now that sort of second unit and the way that this team comes and waves at you and has been this new cool gear. It's been the offensive versatility thing that you've been talking about the whole time. And now we're sitting here being like, I think they just need more of the Wolves starters or the energy or that the Wolves
I get what you're saying. I do think it's one of those things where, if you're losing at the table and you want to make it all back in a hurry, you want to bet like the higher odds thing. There is a part of me that says fight fire with fire. That's what Nickeil Alexander-Walker was talking about tonight. I think you can make it more of a blend. I mean, if this is all being cobbled, this is an immediate reaction. It's cobbled on the fly from what we heard. I heard from Mike Conley in the locker room and what I heard from Nikhil on the podium. Both think that getting into the paint, and Finch thinks so too, because he posted up Ant early, which I know we want to talk about later. But the point being, they had like 20 points in the paint in game one, and they had 44 tonight. So they were able to make an impact inside the arc tonight. And I think if you can play a little bit faster and play, inevitably a little bit riskier, and also invade the paint, which is where they live with all their limbs taking the ball away. It's a risky strategy. But if you're going to play flat out our strength against their strength, I don't see it this year.
I do want to talk about the Wolves did change their sort of offensive process. I want to get to that. Let's grab our break here first. I'll let you all know that we will be at Falling Knife Brewing Company for a live show on Sunday afternoon. Hopefully the Wolves win game 3, so that isn't after the Wolves are down 3-0. Regardless, whatever it is, hopefully, it's after, vibes are high again after the Wolves have some sort of Saturday night comeback. But we're going to be there hanging out. And I don't think I mentioned this before, but Chris Hine is going to join us, Wolves beat writer from the Star Tribune. He just wrote his book comes out on June 3rd, his book he wrote on Anthony Edwards. And, we're going to be talking about this series, but also he's going to have books and stuff there and, share some stories from the book that is there. So it is a live show at Falling Knife Brewing Company this Sunday, 2:30 p.m. happy hour. We'll start the live show at 3:30. It'll be myself, Kyle Teige, and Chris Hine. Love to see you there at Falling Knife. And also, if you're not going to the Wolves game on game 3 on Saturday night, go watch it at Falling Knife. They got the TV truck out there and a grip of
and
Wolves
that
fans
book. He'll have copies of that book probably.
Yes, he will.
And that won't be. I don't think that's available in stores yet.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it doesn't. The book doesn't come out until June.
So if you want an advanced copy of the book, probably autographed, I bet Chris will autograph it for you.
Yeah, I get that Chris Hine.
What the heck? You might as well make Chris do some signing.
Yeah, good.
Get into the celebrity mode.
Yeah, we'll put him to work. Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks. And if you listen to this on Friday morning, it is Flex Friday at Prize Picks. And obviously, we give you the picks and stuff all the time. But Friday is a good day to put together a lineup, because you could put a lineup together that's up to $35, a flex lineup. And if it hits, you win whatever you win off of, depending on what your bet was there. But if you lose, those $35 you're on Flex Friday goes right back in your account. So it's a zero risk bet. You can look at that for Knicks Pacers tomorrow night, but the Wolves slate for game 3 should be up as well. So you can put together a lineup there. Just want to remind you, if you are playing on Prize Picks, that it's always a good idea to put together a Friday lineup, because it's functionally free and will be, if you lose, will go back into your account in your promo funds. If you do not have an account at Prize Picks, you can sign up at prizepicks.com or on the Prize Picks app. You can use the promo code DANE, and your account will be credited with $50 when you place your first $5 lineup. Should we do Wolves offense first or Wolves defense?
Either way.
I think the offense one was interesting, because I think they could have found something that could fuel their offense.
There's some extraordinary halftime differentials in the offense.
Fire away.
In the first quarter, it was very, very even in some respects. They took 48 shots, 24 were twos, 24 were threes. They made 11 of 24 from 2 and 9 of 24 from 3. Okay.
That's the first half.
Second half, 24 again from 2, only 15 from 3.
Okay.
They were 2 of 15 from 3 after going 9 of 24 from 3 in the first half. They were 16 of 24 from 2 in the second half.
They started
which
running
is
a little bit more.
67%.
Yeah. So what
2 out of 3. I'm just saying that the difference, it was 9 for 24, 11 for 24. The differential, the exact same shot amount, percentages pretty close together.
Mm-hmm.
leaned in a little bit more to the twos in the second half and were extremely more accurate from two. 67% from two. 2 of 15 is 1 of 7.5 is like under 20%. Probably like 16% versus 67%. It's pretty remarkable. And so, we don't know always those circumstances for a good.
I think we do know. I mean, so many of those just off the top of our head, it was
Yeah.
fast break. The Wolves actually got out and started running.
Right.
And that's what the twos were,
Right.
actually getting twos that they didn't have to go through the Thunder gauntlet,
Right.
Right. And that is probably, I guess, let's add that to the Wolves offensive process adjustments because they did do that differently. And I even remember
it is flying around too. I mean, that's the thing.
On offense?
Yeah.
Let's fly around on offense.
I mean, when you get out on the break.
Oh, yeah.
Is what I'm saying. In other words,
just running the floor.
Right. But that's the dilemma we're talking about. I mean, you have to be playing relatively turnover free to be doing that stuff against the Thunder. It is a risk.
To be doing, hold on. Why do you need to be playing turnover free to play your offense faster?
Because you're more prone to turn the ball over when you play faster.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. You did ask Finch about that before the game, and he said no. He said that's not true.
I know. That's
you just don't agree with it?
That's because I use quick decision making in there too. And he said, well, of course, if you make quicker decisions, you're going to be able to jump the gun before they can lock you up.
Yeah, but that's what he is saying. No, I think you guys are actually agreeing. You just did like the path that he took to it. The idea is that the Wolves need to play offense faster so that the Thunder defense is not as set as it can be. If they do play faster, will they turn it over more? Probably. But I think that what Finch is arguing is more body and ball movement would lead to better offense globally, even if it leads to 4 or 5 more turnovers.
Is, frankly, what I do lean into. So you did straighten it out in terms of, I see it as a dichotomy, but you're seeing it as a through line to some extent. It's still worth whatever small gamble there is in making the quick decision that may be a careless decision. It is balanced off by the fact that if you give the Thunder time, you're figuring them out. They're figuring you out even faster than you're figuring them out, and they will solve you and have them turn the ball over.
Yeah. I mean, so it's doing that with a greater intention to ball
more
control.
Purpose, more quickness. Exactly.
Let go, like Julius Randle, you can't have hang dribbles. Naz Reid, you can't have hang dribbles. Anthony Edwards, you can't dribble the ball in front of Cason Wallace. I mean, it's like
right.
I think most
dribbling in general, when somebody is near you, is not advisable against the Thunder.
And I think they did, to the Wolves' credit, I think they did less of that in this game. That one example was in the second half in particular, they started running a little bit more. So you have an easier path to the paint where they didn't get to it all in game one. They also, in the first half of this game, they played through the post a lot more.
Yes.
And it wasn't just Julius Randle. It was Naz Reid. It was Anthony Edwards. And I think that's the biggest thing in what the Wolves offensive stat sheet looks like tonight is what an Ant finished with. How many shots did he take? Anthony Edwards, 26 shots. He shot 13 in game one.
Shots.
And that was because, when you're playing him through the post, or you're just playing him kind of on the side quarters of the floor rather than in the high quad, the top middle of the floor.
Right.
It's harder to bring the amount of, you can't bring as much help as you can in the post. And also in the post, you can there's only one place it's going to be coming from. It's going to be Chet from the baseline coming over there, maybe a guy coming down from the top, but it's for Ant, or Julius or Naz there, you kind of know exactly where the doubles or the help is coming from. And then you also know if it is Chet rotating over to the rim, okay, the double is here. That means Jaden McDaniels is wide open in the corner on the other side. And I felt like in the first half, until they kind of let it slip at the end of the second quarter, the Wolves started to have a little bit of an offensive process. But as is the case with the Wolves, they never run any action more than a couple times. Like that's not flow. And I just think they need to direct the ball more to the positions where you know what it is that you're trying to generate offensively, rather than just being like, all right, pistol action. Okay, here we go. Mike has it. He passed to Ant. Ant passed it back to Mike. Mike passed it back to Ant. The Thunder are thwarting like
Right.
any, or they're not giving you any advantages just from little interchanges. The Wolves need to, have, I think, more play set structure type offensive sets that they can get to their offense repeatedly. And I thought playing through the post was one way that they did that, and encouraging in ways.
Let me know if you think this is a coincidence, because I honestly don't know. Okay. You just mentioned the three people that were predominantly used to be in the post: Julius Randle, Naz Reid, and Anthony Edwards, right?
Yeah.
Okay. They were a combined 1 of 17 from 3-point range.
That's not good.
But I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, like maybe they kind of they found something in the post, but they couldn't translate. I mean, they're down there maybe trying
I
something
think
else. I mean, that's just,
I think all
they
three
were
of
the biggest outliers in terms of bad 3-point shooting. When Ant was 1 of 9, Julius was only 0 of 3, and Naz was 0 of 5.
I think those three are the guys that when we've said that it feels like the Wolves are getting rushed offensively, I feel like those three guys are getting rushed offensively more. And what was a relatively open, just kind of catch and shoot three that you knew a guy was coming to close it, but you could take the three at your normal. I'm picturing Nas. Like Nas is like, I shoot
Right.
this pretty
Nas
quick.
has
Like,
that shrug 3, right?
yeah, and you can get it, but like you need to shoot it a little bit faster when it's given the
Right,
way that
right.
the Thunder team goes out. And I think, Julius obviously shot really well in game 1, but I felt like he got sped up in this game. And I felt like Ant, has two, particularly on some of his the catch and shoot opportunities. I mean, 1 of 17 is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But between the three of them, their overall 3-point
1 of
shooting is
9 from
ridiculous.
Anthony Edwards. I mean, if you had said before the playoffs started, Ant's going to have a game where he goes 1 of 9, you'd say the odds of the Wolves winning that game are very low.
Yes.
And
they didn't.
And the idea, though, I mean, so that is, the Thunder are taking away some really fundamental things from the Wolves, and they have done this to teams all year. I mean, I don't want to repeat, like, second verse, same as the first, is what we talked about last game, but this is they are living, the games are being played on their terms almost always. And when they're not played on their terms, it just takes them a while to figure it out, so they can, it's almost like a juggernaut getting off the track, and all right, let's figure out how we get this back on the track. But it isn't a question of whether or not it will get back on the track. It's a question of how do we get it back on the track? You know what I mean? It isn't like, all right, we're going to have to build a whole new track.
This is the Thunder's offense.
No, this is the Thunder in general.
Yeah.
This is the Thunder, basically steamrolling the series.
Right.
With on the track.
With their defense and okay, I get it. How much of this and those, because I think, like, if you watch these two games and the gap that we're talking about here between these teams seems pretty stark through 2 games. How much of it is a product of this being a home game for the Thunder, and how much of it can change there? Are these basketball issues that we're highlighting, can they be resolved by the Wolves playing the next 2 games at home? I never really know how to quantify that stuff.
No, but what I can say is, having seen what the Thunder fans are like in these first 2 games, it can't help but be a positive.
It's nuts.
I mean, it's a very, very loud and organized fan base. They're a lot like their team in terms of the fact that they are incredibly disciplined.
Yeah.
I mean, to be up in the rafters where we are with the lights on in the stadium, so you see the entire crowd in front of you, and you see like 20,000 people doing the exact same thing at the exact same time, wearing the exact same thing.
Right.
It feels like some kind of weird political rally.
Yeah, it does. Especially when they do like the prayer before the game. Target Center is kind of representative of the Wolves. Wolves play a little drunk. Target Center is a little, it's kind of like the chaotic.
Right.
Fuck you, Draymond.
Exactly. So it just is. It's a home court advantage, and it's a very loud. And they're really, I mean, it's a 1 pro sports town, for God's sake. Oklahoma City has no other pro sports franchise.
They have nothing else here at all. But like, can that be a difference? Like,
Yes,
is
I
that
think it can be
that,
a difference. Do I think it? How much of the gap does it close? Not enough.
right? Because
I
you're
mean,
just watching the basketball games of these two games. It goes, this looks like it's going to be a sweep, but I actually don't think it will be.
No,
and
I
I'm
think
looking,
the Wolves have got,
Yeah.
they've got it enough in them, and I do think they have a lot of ingenuity and a lot of versatility, and I do think that the Thunder will drop a game. But I got to tell you, somebody mentioned it to me. 91% of the teams that go up 2-0, 91% win. Now, I think the odds drop a little if the team is going on the road for the next two games, which is what we're talking about now. I think the chances are, maybe only 70% of the teams win those games or whatever. But I still think the odds of the Thunder winning this game, this series, it isn't just 2-0. And the score, if you just looked at the final score, it isn't just the final score. What is happening is who is imposing their will, whose personality is dictating the way the series is being played. It is a thorough schooling right now of the Oklahoma City way or the Timberwolves way. And right now, the Timberwolves are frantically doing a lot of adjusting, and Oklahoma City is only tweaking.
That's well put. And what I'm trying to figure out is how much of that is a product of home cooking or whatever versus just talent and execution. Yeah, because there's a lot of things in this pot for why the Thunder have looked like the far superior team.
And home court advantage is one of them.
Yeah,
no doubt about
it. That's the way to put that there. All right, where do you want to go next? Should we just focus on Randall in particular? He just
it was a.
Oh no, I wanted to do Wolves defense.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean that was I felt like the Thunder also got into their offensive rhythm in this game. They as both of the coaches
they had a better start.
Yeah, but it's kind of been the sparring sort of thing. Your game one, you're feeling it out. That's what both of the coaches said before. Game one, you're kind of feeling it out. And I don't think the Wolves really effectively felt it out. They made a couple of changes. Okay, we want to play through the post. We want to do the things that we were talking about before. Got to get into the paint to play. And Oklahoma City's was tweaks, like you said, where I think they knew and understood how the Wolves were going to guard them when Rudy's out there and at the start of the game. Or whenever Rudy's out there, if they're in man, they're going to be playing in drop. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams knew that and disciplined, attacked that over and over again. And in drop coverage, unless you're playing at a really high, like playing really connected between McDaniels and Gobert, that 14, 15, 16-foot shot is going to be there for Williams and Gilgeous-Alexander. And they both, I think in the first half, it was like 5 of 7 and 6 of 8 or something from 2-point range for both of those guys. And I thought it was them in a way sort of figuring out the Wolves defense a little bit more, which I thought played really well in game one.
I agree. They did.
And then
they played really hard tonight. Yeah. And it wasn't like, I don't think this team loafed on defense tonight at all.
Well, you don't think the Wolves did?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought they were trash.
You thought they were not exerting effort?
I thought they were not. Well, just the pick and roll coverage was very poor from the Wolves, and it was just giving clearly Gilgeous-Alexander and Williams, when they were going in to a pick and roll action, knew exactly what they were getting to, and their mid-range shots, but they were hitting them at a high clip. I thought the Wolves played defense hard and better when they were sitting in that zone, and there wasn't anything to sort of read. But like it's playing Rudy Gobert and playing zone and Rudy not being able to do anything on. It's just like, this is kind of what the Wolves defense is empowered by, is their man-to-man defense on the perimeter and having Rudy back at the rim. Like, that's why the Wolves are a good defense. When you sit in zone, like, yeah, you might be able to like catch them out of rhythm for a little bit, but if that becomes your main diet of your defense, particularly if you're the Timberwolves and you're a good defensive team, this isn't Denver.
Right.
Denver is like, we played zone because we're not very good at defense.
Exactly.
And I've felt like the Wolves just defensive. I mean, I have to go back and watch it, like, but I that was what my notes kept being, was like, Shea got him again here. Shea got him again here. And it wasn't grifting fouls. It wasn't that. It was attacking the Wolves coverage that he seemed to know what they were doing more than they knew what they were doing.
But I think it stands to reason that if you put Rudy in drop coverage, what you are vulnerable to is the short mid-range. And so you're playing right into the Thunder's hands, because both Jalen Williams and especially SGA, the short mid-range for SGA is a layup. I mean, it's the same thing. And so, and I think on the occasions where they began to react against that, you always had the Hartenstein floater, or you always had the open corner. You know, I mean, it's not quite the same as Dallas pick your poison with Lively, Luka, or Gafford in the corner, but it is similar in terms of the fact that there were too many options that they could dedicate themselves to options, but it immediately exposed them to other options. And I don't think that's necessarily a matter of effort. I think that's a matter of the chessboard.
Right. Just like is that even a good coverage to play against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, period?
Well, and that calls it, you know, Chris Finch, he did eventually sit Rudy, you know, for the final 6 minutes.
Well, that's the progression, right?
Randall.
Drop.
Right.
Okay, drop isn't working with Rudy out there. Okay, you go to zone with Rudy out there, and then you go to like, all right, we just take Rudy out, and
Randall went out too. And I think
coverage.
A lot of that was offense more than defense, which I think we'll get into later. But I do think, again, I don't think it's necessarily effort. I think it is that the Thunder execute things extremely well, and the Wolves could not take away enough things, and the Thunder is smart enough to utilize the things that they were dropping. And so it looked like they were horribly out of position, but I'm not sure they were out of position because they were lazy. They were out of position because they were playing something that was trying to stop something that wasn't being executed.
Yeah, I'm always bad at kind of like,
well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know
that live. You know, that if we go back and watch it.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I can tell you. Here's what I can tell you. I can tell you that from my perspective, and this is probably a dig on the Wolves as much as it is praise of the Thunder, but the closeouts and the way people converge to the ball on the Thunder side of things versus the Wolves side of things was a dramatic difference.
Yeah, the Wolves are a very casual team, like an approach to a lot of the time. And sometimes, and what makes them awesome is when all of a sudden that casualness disappears because they get pissed about something that's normally led by Ant, or Rudy is just like, he's super locked in and there's a fire there. Now there's just
with a huge exception of Rudy when he's got the right schemes to play with, and Jaden McDaniels always. I mean, Jaden McDaniels,
not casual. Yeah.
He's having a great series. I mean, it's weird to say that, but I mean, Jaden McDaniels tonight was 8 for 15. We hit half of his 8 3-pointers. I mean, that's not his game. 2 rebounds, no assists, but chasing, you know.
Yeah, I'm not worried about rebounds when he's out there or assists. Yeah, those aren't
points, 3 blocks. You know, I mean, the guy is digging deep.
He did get cooked by Shai. I mean, offensively he did. I mean, I don't know. There's nobody else on the team that can guard him.
And to the point where he basically said, "That's it. You know, I'm going to announce to the world I am cooked by shoving this guy down."
Remove the basically. That was just
like that was the white flag. When Jaden is getting to the point where he's near violence, you know he's losing.
All right, let's move on to like what can change, what can be different for the Wolves for game 3. You're gonna have the home court advantage. That's for sure in your coffer there. I'm not sure that necessarily means that the Thunder's defense is going to be any different. You know, you're going to still need to be navigating the same things from a turnover, standpoint. You're going to still be navigating the same things from them having the paint packed. I would assume they roll out their same game plan that they kind of been rolling with for the last two. So then I think it becomes, Wolves winning back some more of the areas that should be marginal in this series that haven't been in the first two games. Obviously, 3-point shooting's there. The Wolves should be more of a force on the offensive and defensive glass in this series, and haven't been. Those are weak points of this Thunder team. The Wolves should be able to attack. I mean, they need to be more intentional and less casual about pursuing specific matchups.
Mm-hmm.
Why can Chet just lurk off of Nikhil the whole time?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Just go get Nikhil in the action. Go have Nikhil just screen, and then boom, it takes like 2 seconds. And now Chet is guarding Ant or Randall, and it's just better. There's just not. That's what these teams are doing in the playoffs. Is they're
hunting matchups.
They're just hyper specific about doing stuff. And Finch said after game one, he's we got bogged down in that. But we overlooked for matchups and stuff like that. It's like, I don't know. Maybe you're just not doing it quick enough. Maybe you're not playing sharp enough. Maybe it's all of those things. It's not hard to right away at the beginning, get up the floor and just go switch it.
Do you think it is Finch? Do you think it is the fact that he's not setting either the tone or the table of contents on what the offense needs forcefully and directly enough?
Yeah, I think that, or that's something he could do more of in practice tomorrow, of hey, actually we are we're approaching this less as artists and more as scientists,
and let's do this.
Yeah, I just and I don't think that is necessarily has to become some massive departure from your identity. This Thunder team is too smart.
Mm-hmm.
They don't. Their whole team was built in this image of all these efficiencies, and I know Finch hates that stuff, and I know he would never want to be a coach like Daignault or
an organization.
He loves Conley is his type of
it is
of
a
GM
different philosophy, right? And that's actually, frankly, one of the reasons that now it looks very wrongly. I went with the Wolves for the series because I thought they had that emotional gear, that emotional juice that they could rely on.
They do, and we'll probably see that.
And that would be wonderful to see.
Don't have
I will tell you, my confidence in that appearing is dwindling. Here's what I would say in terms of what can they do, and this is almost a casual fan simplicity, but right now I think there's some logic to it. Anthony Edwards has to be centered more in terms of using his overwhelming skill. In other words, he can enable for others, but there are definitely going to be times where you just set him up to use a little more screen, double screen for Ant, get him off, just get him some open looks, get him into a groove, have him start to be a little bit less concerned.
The way you're describing that kind of sounds as whimsical as their thing is. I mean, the operative word there is set up.
Yeah.
You want Ant to be in a position to be a 20, 25, 30 shot per game guy, and you want him to do it efficiently. It can't just be go ahead wherever you can get it.
I agree.
That's
what I mean. I do think, though, that there has to be a situation where sometimes I would say to him, don't get off the ball. We're going to have to tilt back to the fact that you're an extraordinary talent that can. I mean, look at what Jokic.
I liked how he got off it and got back to it. He did a lot of that. He got off it and came back.
Finch was actually very happy when I asked him, you say near triple-double Ant is the best Ant. Well, he had that tonight. What do you think? And he had mostly praise for what Ant did.
Yeah, no,
and there's reason for that. But he also shot 1 of 9 from 3, and that makes him 11 for 17 from 2, which isn't bad.
Yeah,
and got to the line 10 times, which isn't bad.
No, and that's what I'm saying. I think Ant played well
I think he played well too, but I think again, at the risk of having the perfect be the enemy of the good. He needs to be able to get threes too, and he needs to be able to hit those threes.
Well, and it just, and I don't know. I mean, that's the part of coaching that I don't understand. And he's probably, Finch would be listening to us saying this and be like,
slapping his head.
well, he would just be like, do you think all of a sudden, like, my team can start playing smart? We made it to the Western Conference Finals. We haven't been. I mean, they haven't been like a super sharp,
But if
smart.
you've been a dumb team all year,
yeah,
whose fault is that?
Well, it's
head coach.
No, I mean, I think it's Ant's.
Right.
I mean, it's because Ant that's not how Ant approaches it.
Right.
And he has a coach that doesn't ask him to play a structured style of play and never has. And that's cool. And it's done some things. Dumb wasn't the right word to use, but they're like, it's casual.
I know. It's always been,
and it's illuminated against a team like this that plays extremely sharp. And it's very, Shea is very directive, when you know what it is. Ant is just kind of flowing through that and is incredible. So he can shoot 11 for 17, even when Lou Dort is guarding him there. I'm just saying, I feel like this series is exposing that gear of structure that this Wolves team has never had.
Mm-hmm.
They've and intentionally, since Rudy Gobert got here, they've never been like, we're going to be a team that runs pick and roll much. They don't. He doesn't want to do that because he doesn't. Finch hates that. He hates the homogenization or whatever of it. He doesn't want to do that. And I'm just saying, I think if the series goes down in a similar pattern to how it has gone, it doesn't make the offense that they have and the flow-based concept system a bad idea. What to me it says it would be nice if you had another gear where you could be a little bit more robotic offensively. I know that sounds bad, but they don't have that.
And I bragged about their versatility. Well, versatility means a lot, adjust to whatever. And what you were talking about is using the starters. Let's face it, Conley and Gobert are what your solution is to some extent, because at the very least, you're not reinventing the wheel.
Right.
And they are as old as the wheel in terms of, running that pick and roll. It would be interesting to see how, the Thunder could challenge that. I'm sure they have, they obviously have Hartenstein and Chet and other people. But
that's what I'm just saying. Like with Ant, you're like, okay, I would like to see more of it. Why can't, what would happen if you just went 5 possessions in a row where Rudy came up and set a high screen for Ant and you just played out of it? And
exactly.
You just played spread pick and roll for a while.
Right.
I know they've never done that at all in Finch's tenure here, but that's an extremely normal thing to do in the NBA playoffs right now. Go watch whatever. I mean, I've never understood why that hasn't been a gear that this team has. I know Ant's not a very good pick and roll passer.
Right.
Rudy's not a very good pick and roll catcher, but Rudy is a good screener. Ant is explosive off of screens.
And he can catch Conley most of the time. It's not. He can catch Conley's passes most of the time.
Rudy can't. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just
right.
They could, and they do run pick and roll. If you look at the percentage of the pick and roll that they do run in the season, a lot of it is Mike and Rudy pick and roll because they speak that language.
Right.
And Ant just is not a pick and roll player. He just hasn't been. That isn't like or it's not one of his primary sort of things. I'm just saying, clearly, I think against really good defenses like Oklahoma City, just kind of swinging the ball around and moving it and feeling and flowing off of it. There's just I think there's going to be a limitation to that. And I thought they did some things that were good. I thought playing through the post was a really good idea today.
Right.
I thought the, other ways of when they would start Ant off ball and he would come off of a pin down screen and come up there, but just their general approach of just let's walk up and play offense, which somehow they did pretty decently.
Let me give you another one, which, you had referenced earlier. Finch talked about it.
You just won't let me finish anything.
I won't let you finish.
Yeah, man.
I am actually, what I'm saying is Conley and Randall.
Yep. That's a good
pick and roll.
Yeah.
So I'm feeding into.
Yeah. That's and that was new. And that was last round. I loved that because it was another,
it's a way of,
right?
It's a way of imposing structure, and it's like spread pick and roll, only it's simpler because it's 2, I mean, but it's. I
wonder-
am feeding into your
Yeah, I got you now. I got you now. I thought you were going in a different direction. I was like, Jesus. I do wonder because the Randall pick and roll is a good one to bring up because that was a weapon in the previous round. I wonder, are those play calls? Or are those two just like getting into it? I don't know. It's just
I know.
it's hard for me. It's hard for me to know, and I'm not down there. I don't know. Obviously, Finch knows way more than I do about all this stuff. I'm just saying this has always been a thing for me where I am just in general more on the side of like I think
Structure, right?
yeah, that's just like a
Right.
general way of and so because of that, I probably don't have enough appreciation for when flow is working. And thus when flow isn't working, I'm like, structure.
Well, I mean, I think that it's very fair to criticize a turnover prone, poor 3-point shooting offense right now
You're right.
against a defensive juggernaut. I think to not try to pick it apart is irresponsible. I mean, I'm a Chris Finch stan. I love the guy.
Yeah.
But his offense has not delivered against a ace defense, and he needs to make some kind of adjustment that can be both repeatable and effective. And that's really hard to do against a team as smart and is already disciplined in what they live in that skin all the time. So that's going to be the balance. The balance is play craps with all out, up and down the floor, fly around and everything, which I think is part of it. And also figure out your best half court sets, work through the post, work through pick and roll, get Mike and Randall, get the veterans. What we're talking about, Mike, Randall, and Rudy are the three principles we're talking about here mostly. And Randall certainly can be on the front end of a pick and roll also.
Yeah.
We could, you could, I don't know how it would work, quite frankly, but I think you could run 4 or 5 pick and rolls because Randall can get the ball to Rudy. And, and he's a decent lobber, and everybody thinks he's going to try that hard banker. If he just throws it up in the air, that's going to be there. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I
think we're saying this because we both actually feel like they can beat this Thunder defense. Like it's the best defense in the league, clearly.
Yes.
But it doesn't feel completely impenetrable.
Right. Well, I mean, in Denver pierced it a few times.
Yeah.
And actually Memphis did one game before, they got really blitzed. But, and again, it's not perfect. And there are that they did, it was a dominant defense. They allowed 3.6 points per 100 possessions, fewer than any other team in the NBA. It is a very good defense, and all those things apply. But the Timberwolves have a lot of talent, and Tim Connolly said it at the end of last year. Of any team with, Naz Reid, Anthony Edwards, and Karl Anthony Towns is going to be a great offense. Well, now it's Julius Randle, Naz Reid, and Anthony Edwards. You should be able to cook with that in some way, shape, or form. And then Dante Diva. Here's the wild card in all of this is always in a make or miss league, the variance of the 3-pointer right now. Some of that, John Krasinski was on this. He was at most of his questions were kind of what we were talking about after game 1. I
asked all the players about that at shoot around this morning too.
Is, how much of it is pressure, how much of it is pressure in your head, and how much of it is pressure on the court, And I would say both, but I would also say that
don't you think, though, if you were running more offense to generate 3-point shots rather than, more frantically getting 3-point shots?
Connolly told us how. Basically, drive the paint, kick to the corner, because that one thing statistically, and even I knew this and asked the question that way, the corner threes are there against the Thunder. And they've had a lot of corner threes, but they haven't hit them. And some of that is they do, that is one of the places where, we're up in the rafters, so we can see the closeouts, and they're pretty quick closeouts.
That's where Denver pierced Oklahoma City's defenses, like,
and with big guys like Aaron Gordon who can shoot over closeouts.
Yeah, well, what I was going to say was what
Michael
Oklahoma
Porter
City
Jr.
has very good defenders, right? But what they're also doing is using those very good individual defenders as help defenders a lot of the time. So what your offensive process has to be, or Jokic's was okay, I'm constantly feeling my touches and understanding that where the help is coming from, and now where the side of the floor is, the angle of the spot where now you have two guys to their one. And that's what, right? That's what Jokic always does. That's his superpower. I wonder how often Anthony Edwards ever thinks that way. Right? I mean, like,
no, I know.
I'm not even trying to rip on him. It's just like that's why he's a very different offensive player than Nikola Jokic is.
Right.
And frankly, why he's a worse offensive player than Nikola Jokic is. It's also the reason that he could end up becoming as good or as better than of a player than Nikola Jokic, because if you
could acquire some of that,
you can acquire some of the intellect while having more of the offensive force and the shot and all of those type of things. I actually think Julius Randle typically does a pretty good job of that when he's not being sped up, of being like, okay, this is the release valve in the offense. Oh, it's the corner here. And I know, and Ant learns, and he's doing all those things, but I think we've all little kind of put the crown on him a little too early. Of he understands all these defenses and he understands how to do it all.
His maturation, right?
Yeah, and I think he's moving in a nice.
Well, this is the master class.
Yes, it is.
I mean, he's up against the Thunder defense that is elite, and if we want to pull back from this, the ugly pullback is that they're in deep shit. I mean, they lost 2 games convincingly, and they have mental hurdles to overcome as well as strategic hurdles. And the Thunder, spent the day off getting an MVP award and 2 defensive all defense awards to the Wolves. Won all defense. Both Dort and Jalen Williams made all defense, as did Rudy Gobert. 2 of those guys have been very effective on defense, and one of them hasn't. Rudy has not been nearly as effective defensively. Lou Dort tonight was plus 29 in 34-39. What that means in a 15-point game is, in the 13 minutes and 21 seconds that he sat, the Wolves outscored them by 14 points.
Jeez.
And I don't think Julius Randle's disappearance is totally a coincidence that Lou Dort's plus 29. I mean, that's a great guy to be able to throw on Julius Randle.
Oh yeah, whenever they had Reed and Randle out there, it was always Caruso and Jalen Williams were out there to match that. They and then obviously Dort to guard Ant. Yeah, sorry, continue.
No, and that's okay. So essentially, you have a situation where you've got players. We saw Caruso guard Jokic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in a jaw-dropping way. Lou Dort, you can single cover Anthony Edwards 80% of the possessions if Lou Dort is on him. That's that gives you, like, it's almost like having 6 defenders on the floor, because you've got the instant double on Ant with one guy.
Yeah.
And so, plus 29. And he did, he was also on Julius Randle some of the time. A lot of it was switches, a lot of it coming down. But Randle, just in general, 2 of 11, 0 for 3. He did have 5 assists and 5 rebounds, but 4 turnovers.
Right.
4 turnovers, 6 points, minus 15. Some of that was his space was invaded by a lot of different people if they're working through the post, right?
Yeah, and I don't know, and maybe some of this just is like, this is just too good of a defense, and
what I keep coming back to.
Yeah, and so we're saying, oh, you got to do this and that, but it's just the thing is everything's hard, everything's hard against the Thunder defense. I think to hold on to optimism or for what can
Right.
change is that I think like a dam can break at a time, and you can go on a
Absolutely.
run, and you like the Wolves
We
haven't
see
done
it in
that.
series all the time.
Yeah, and if they ever start hitting some threes, you
Right.
know, I think that starts.
The threes
going
are
with it.
definitely the skeleton key
Yeah.
that this team needs because, first of all, it's not pie in the sky. We've seen, I mean, Anthony Edwards made more three-pointers than anybody in the NBA this year.
Right.
So the idea that he could go off is far from specious or dreamlike.
Yeah, right.
Um,
But the Thunder defense limits you from three more than anybody else. That the worst
does.
3-point percentage
but
against.
right now, that needle is swung to what I regard as an inordinate degree. And I think that even if that evens out some, that gives you a lot more wiggle room than you had before.
Yeah.
I mean, if we are talking now in terms of, without being abject homers, trying to figure out a realistic path by which they make this a series, I think just guys hitting even their somewhat rushed shots.
Yeah. Which they can. They can
Well,
make.
I mean,
those.
and I can't remember what the 3-point percentage was. I think it was very similar to the 28.2 they had tonight, though. I think that they have not hit 33% in the series thus far. And let's say that they hit the league average 35%,
Yeah, they're 29% in game one.
Okay, so they're not even at 30%. If they get to 40%, that's 10% more. If you're taking, let's say you take the average of that 43s, and you make 40%. Anyway, it's going to be two.
Right.
It's double-digit improvement.
Yeah, and I would be curious to see if and when that happens, what sort of other positive externalities come out of it. Can they not just live in the paint? Is Ant able to have a quarter like the third quarter he had against the Warriors, where he had 25 or whatever he had? Like, I don't think it's chicken or egg. I think, or I don't know how that would work.
No.
The threes just probably need to happen for the Wolves to be able to do anything consistently.
And, I mean, Denver is a fine team. They're not a better team than the Wolves this year, in my opinion, and they won 3 games.
True.
And there are dynamics. The dynamics have synergized in the Thunder's direction, and it is up to the Wolves to. You can't start a fire with one piece of wood. You need something to rub together at the very least. And so the threes are one thing, working through the post is another thing, maybe getting a little structure is another thing, or maybe just grabbing a lead in the third quarter at home and relaxing into your game.
Right.
See, that's the thing that I don't like the home court advantage thing as an excuse sometimes. It isn't so much the home court, it's the manner of the Wolves being able to suddenly say, I think we're going to, we are the better team.
Right.
And having it be something where there's actually evidence of that.
Right.
So they know in the back of their mind, we're just kidding ourselves right now. Because that's the way it's felt in the middle of the third quarters, the last 2 games, the Wolves saying to themselves, we're not measuring up here.
Yeah, it's like they want to settle into their rhythm, but by doing that, they get a little loose.
That's
and as soon as you
saying.
get loose,
Nikhil was saying, we go back to what we,
right.
the return to the what you would call the lax mindset of we're going to fool around and fuck around and find out.
Well, they found out so far, but I'm curious to see what the difference is at
it's
home.
The Western Conference Finals. Yeah. Being able to watch Western Conference Finals games, even if there's only 2 more slaughters left, is still pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I don't think
I don't either.
There will be, but we'll see on what does that sound Saturday, and there probably is something to the momentum element of it. I'm always bad at but if the Wolves do shoot at a better clip and they go on a 17-2 run now for the series rather than it being Oklahoma City. I do think that
And
changes
they have
things up.
personnel to do that, obviously.
They do. And it is not like you said, there isn't a huge talent gap. What I think we hit home tonight is there's been an execution gap in
Absolutely.
the first two games.
And an anticipatory, purposeful. There's been a readiness gap.
Yeah.
That has always been a weakness of the Wolves relative to the Thunder. It's the weakness of every team in the NBA relative to the Thunder. But there are ways to accumulate it in your own way.
Right.
The Wolves have a tendency sometimes. Rudy gets a couple of baskets early, like he did against the Lakers, and suddenly Rudy is catching the ball on the run and not turning it over every time or being terrified when he gets the ball. Or, Dante or Nas start hitting like 3 or 4 in a row, and Ant begins to josh with the people in the front row because he's rolling. Everybody's got their comfort zone, and there's been very, very little comfort to be found in the first 2 games. But we know because of the changes that have happened just from 2 games ago when nobody knew what was going to happen. And we had these 2 games, things can change. And that's the beauty of a series. And things can change, as Indiana has proven over and over again this year, in a hurry.
Right.
Wolves are capable of that. They've done it against this very Thunder team, albeit without Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle.
I'm really interested to see how they do respond for game 3, because at the end of the day, there is still a real opportunity right here, right now, like to win a championship.
Very good point.
And if there's ever a time to be like, hey, let's grow up fast. Let's make all the lists on that you and I randomly kind of put together. And the Wolves coaching staff could do a significantly better job of that. If they just sit down and be like, hey, we are intentional about doing all of these things that we didn't do in games 1 and 2. And if we do them, we can go to the NBA finals and and maybe be favored in the finals.
Play against either a 3 seed or a 4 seed.
Yeah. Like that still exists here. And it feels very far away given how close these 2 games were. But it can, sometimes we need to remind ourselves that it can just sometimes be 2-1,
right.
of that just being how it moves in the playoffs. So we were looking for a response today because we thought that's what would be the most likely way of.
I expected them to play better, and I didn't expect them to win, but I would not have been the slightest bit surprised if they'd win. I wouldn't have gone, because I actually expected them to win one of the first 2 games until I saw how the first one went. I wasn't as sure, but it isn't. I'm always really leery of whistling past the graveyard, but it is the 3rd game of the Western Conference Finals. Yeah. If you get to the Western Conference Finals, you have talent and you have cohesion and style and ability to do things. And they just have to break through and change the narrative of the series, at least briefly. Get everybody out there, but maybe it is a series, And then game 4 is big. And then you even it up, and there we go. I mean, we've all seen this, and we've all seen the Wolves be teams have been in a worse predicament than the Wolves and won a series. 100%. But again, it's just you have to see it to believe it.
Absolutely. We'll be watching it in Minneapolis on Saturday and do a post-game pod after that one as well. I appreciate you doing both of these with me, Britt, and we'll be back with Kyle in Minneapolis after game 3. Until then, he's Britt, I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.